We get the current Daf Mesechta Bava Kama Daf Nun Zayin and begin on the bottom of line of Nun Vav Beis, where the Gemara continues the conversation that we began in the previous Daf regarding Machlekes Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef regarding a Shomer Aveda. We were talking about Shomer. That's really what the theme of this opening Mishnah of our Parak HaKonis was talking about, regarding the responsibility of watching an animal. So then we got into a conversation regarding a Shomer Aveda. Someone finds a lost object. Rabbi says he's like a shemachinam. Rabbi Yosef says like a shemesachar. And the Gemara explained two interpretations according to Rabbi Yosef. Why would we make him into like someone who's a shemesachar if seemingly he's watching for free? Either because that pleasure that he has, that he doesn't have to do the mitzvah of giving a poor man bread, is considered like a schar and therefore shemesachar, or simply because it's not like stam you're watching for free. The Torah is mandating it, so therefore there's more of a responsibility than in general. Now the Gemara will have 7 different proofs regarding this halacha of which opinion is correct of that of Rabbi or Rabbi Yosef. Sponsored by Kalzach and Cheskel, turn to Daf Yomi, turn to today's Daf, should be schus v'achinu b'nei Yisrael and Yisrael throughout the world. So discussing today's Daf, like we said, a Shomer Aveda is considered a shemachinam or a shemesachar. The ramification is obviously a shemachinam is patur from Gneva Aveda. If it gets stolen or lost, he's exempt. Shemesachar is chayv Gneva Aveda, but he's patur from oinus. The question is regarding a seicher, regarding someone who is renting an object. Is he considered a shemachinam or a shemesachar? The Gemara is going to differentiate between a ganav and a gazlan. A ganav is someone who surreptitiously, someone secretly goes and steals. Gazlan is someone straight up steals, and there's halachic differences between the two of them. And the Gemara has a conversation regarding a list of mezuyin. Armed bandits they consider a ganav, and therefore who does pay kefil. That's the ramification. The ganav pays kefil. Or a gazlan who does not pay kefil, because in a sense they're really secretive, but at the same time they're coming straight up to you and saying life for your money. So in a way they're like a ganav, like a gazlan. The ramification would be, would they pay kefil? And then related to that is what's called toyin tainas ganav. The guy doesn't actually steal. He's making the claim of that it was stolen. He has the same halachic status as if he stole, and hence if he was a shomer and he's saying, hey, it was stolen from me, he would be liable as if he stole, and he would be chayav kefil. In contrast to toyin tainas gazlan, that would not be, because the halacha is only by a ganav versus that of a gazlan. So begin the current daf Nun Vav Beis, the bottom line up, on the bottom line of the Amid, we said Shomer Aveda. What's his status while guarding it until he returns it? Rabbi says like a shemachinam, because what pleasure is he getting? Rabbi Yosef says no, he's like a shemesachar, as we said, either because he's getting the no of not giving back to the poor person, or because keeping the rachmana shibdi bal karchei is obviously more of an obligation, a responsibility, because the Torah mandates you to do this, and therefore you have the halacha like a shemesachar. Now the Gemara brings a siman and a manik for 7 proofs regarding this machlekes, which are alluded to by the siman hechzira, la'olam, hashev, chia, amrit, nishber, and seicher. And as we're going to see, those are the 7 proofs that the Gemara brings, which Eisvei Rav Yosef l'Rabba, that's the first proof from the word hechzira, which Rabba held that the Shomer Aveda is like a shemachinam, as you can see in Tabam Nun Zayin Med Aleph. The Gemara asked on that from the following brisa. Hechzira, if someone returns a lost object, l'makom shiur to a place where the owner will see it, ein chayav l'tabel ba. He's not obligated to be busy with this aveda, with this lost object anymore. Now, nigneva avda, if it gets stolen or if it gets lost, chayav b'achar yusa, he's responsible for what happens to the object to reimburse the owner. Says the Gemara, my nigneva avda. What is the brisa saying when it says if it gets stolen or lost? Lav nigneva mi beisai v'avda mi beisai. Isn't it talking about if it gets lost or stolen from the home of the one who found it? Meaning that a shomer chinam is exempt from gneva and aveda. Shomer sachar is chayiv with gneva aveda, as the Gemara says in Hashayel b'matzidav tzadi dalit mabeis. So wait a second. You see, if it's stolen or lost from his home, the guy who finds it is going to be chayiv. Shomer aveda then is what halacha? Is obviously like a shemesachar. So Rabbi Yosef, that's like me, not like you, Rabbi, who says like a shemachinam, because or else he should be patur from gneva aveda. Says the Gemara, loy. Now that's not the way you interpret it. It's mimakom she'chzira. It's from the place where he returned it to, which Chase explains that even a shemechinam is what Rabbi would say, would be chayiv because you're negligent. Because when you put it back, you didn't give it to me. But in your home? No, in the chadami. It's not negligence. And you'd be patur aganev aveda. Says the Gemara, how could you say that? But the first line of the brisa was, ein chayav l'tapel. If you put it back to where he'll see it, you're not responsible to take care of it. And then you tell me if it gets stolen or lost, that then you're going to be chayav? What does that mean? So Amalei says, and it depends on when and what time this is going to be. Here we're talking about that he put it back there in the afternoon. And therefore what? So the Gemara explains, but there's really two cases that the Bryce is talking about. And now, therefore, they're not contradictory. This is how you're supposed to read the Bryce. If you return it in the morning to a place where the owner will likely see it, who lost the object. Where it's common that he comes and he goes and he'll see the object that you put because people are in their home area at that time. Yeah, in the Chevet, but then you're not responsible to take care of it anymore. If you put it back there in the afternoon, then the place will see it. Where it's not common that the owner will be coming and going at that point in time because then he's in the field doing his work. So the Chazir is not going to see it. If it gets stolen or lost, them is responsible for insurance, and therefore it's not difficult on Rabbah because it's not talking about from his home. It's talking about from where he returned it. So I thought returning, is it okay? It depends. In the morning it's okay. In the afternoon it's not going to be okay. The Gemara continues to Raya number 2. Eisvei, the Gemara asks again from the Brisa over there. This is with the word la'olam from the mnemonic. La'olam u'chayv. So the Brisa continues and says, the one who finds the lost object is always going to be responsible until he returns it to the possession, to the domain of the owner. Says the Gemara, my la'olam. What does it mean forever? La va'afila, isn't it even if the one who finds it, if he placed it even mi beisai in his own home, that we say that he's going to be responsible, he's going to be liable. Obviously, that we consider him as a shemer sacher, because if he's a shemer chinam, then he wouldn't be liable. Obviously, the word la'olam is implying that the finder is chayv v'genev avedim, and if he was not peshen, he guarded the aveda. Amalei, so that Rabbi says to him, no, not necessarily. Why? Because Medina, I agree to you, by a lost object b'balichayim, that's a living creature, that the one who finds it will be liable for genev aveda. But not because of your svara, because, the schar of the mitzvah that you gain it, you don't have to give poor to a man bread, and there's different mitzvah, but the mitzvah, no. It's because by an animal, the genev and aveda is a negligence. What does that mean? So he explains. What happened? You found a lost animal, which means to say the kima de nakti lahu nigra barayasa. Since you see that this animal has the habit of leaving, and that's how it got lost, and needs an extra level of protection. And therefore it says, Rabbi, even if it's correct like me, that the Shem of it is like a Shemachin, we'd be liable. But like Rashi explained, but if he's Shemer of an Aveda, of Metatlin, of a ball or a bat, he'll be part of him in Aveda. Here it's specifically referring to an animal where the animals get lost. And that's how it got lost. And therefore, your regular protection is not enough, and therefore you're going to be chayiv until you return it to the possession of the original owner. So therefore it's not a difficulty on Rabbah. Now the question goes the other way. From Eisvei Rabbah Rav Yosef, and the next mnemonic is Hashev. The pasuk says in Devarim, Hashev, when it says that you should not turn a blind eye from your ox of your brother or a sheep, you should return it. Now, the word Hashev sounds like a full-fledged return. So therefore it says the Bryce, I would only know that you could return it to the guy's house. How do you know that you could even return it to his garden or to his ruins, that it's enough where the one who finds it can return it to the garden of the owner? It says in the pasuk, teshivim. It says Hashev teshivim, extra word of returning. Any type of returning is going to be okay. So says the Gemara, says Rabbi Yosef, what does the Brisa mean that you're including from the word teshivim his garden and his ruins? If you think to say it means his protected gardens, and the ruins that are protected, that is his house. What's the difference? They're both protected areas where a person lives. Rather, it's obvious. We're talking about where it's his garden that's not protected, and the ruins that are not protected. Obviously, that a Shem Aved is like a Shem Mechinim. Why? Because when it's not protected, it's what's called a Shmira Bechusa. It's an inferior type of a Shmira. And you're still allowing him to get away with that. That would only make sense if it's a Shem Mechinim. If it's a Shem Mesacher, he has a higher level of responsibility. So then why would he be potter by putting into that guy's unprotected garden or roots? So on that Amalei, Rav Yosef says to him, no. Truth is, you're right. I hold this as a Shem Mesacher. He has to have a higher level of a Shmira. You're right. This that we're including a garden and the ruin has to be that it's protected, and that's the only way that the Shem Mesacher, who the Shem Aveda is, would be exempt. You're asking me, saying, well, then that's the same thing as his house. No. What we're coming to teach is that you don't need to have the awareness of the owner. Meaning, we put in the guy's house, the guy's going to see it. Put in his garden, he might not see it. Still, you don't need to have his awareness as long as it's mishtameres. Rabbi Lazar says, truth is, everything needs the owner's awareness. Let's say you stole or you robbed or one of the four shaymim that are returning an object. You have to notify the owner. If you didn't notify him, the one who returned it is still reliable for ensuring what happens to the thing. Which is what we're talking about, except for returning a lost object. Why? Torah includes hashif tishiv and many types of returns, even the return that he's not aware about. That's the chiddush inherent in this brayso of ginasei charvasai. It's only simply because he won't be aware, and that's what we're saying. That even though it's mishtameres, but he's not going to be aware, it's still going to be enough. So on that continues the Gemara with the next namanik, which is chia. Amalei abayla Rav Yosef. Abayla said to Rav Yosef, "Atlei tizbera deshem ravedik shem mechinim dami." Don't you hold like Rabba that someone who's guarding a lost object is like someone who's an unpaid custodian? But v'amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he says the following halacha: Hatoyin tainus ganev be'aveda. What does that mean to say? What does it mean that by a lost object someone's going to claim the claim of it being stolen? So if let's say there's someone watching a lost object, and he put up a sign in shul, says, "Please, if you lost this watch, contact whatever." And the guy comes and says, "I want my watch." He says, "Oi, it was stolen from my house last night." So that's how he gets off the hook, where he's going to say it was lost, it was stolen, and it turns out that really he had it all along. He has unsicked with this watch. He liked it a lot. He didn't want to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was stolen," but he really had it. Says Reb Chia, this guy, the Shomer Aveda, when we chap him that he really has it, he has to pay double the amount, like a ganav himself, who has to pay double when he gets caught. As the Gemara Darshan is pregnant, Ruba later on of Samachim on Beis, it says in the pasuk, "V'im lo yimotze haganav." If you're not going to find the ganav, now that's a simple translation of the pasuk. The way the Gemara Darshans is, "V'im lo yimotze haganav," is if you're not going to find as he had said, rather you find he himself is the ganav. So the pasuk later says, "Yishal Shlam," he has to pay double the amount. Okay, that's the halacha Rabbi Chia is saying. Now, if you're going to say that a Shem Aveda is like a Shem Chinam, he's like an unpaid custodian, so we understand why he would have to pay kefil with making this claim, because he was trying to get himself off the hook by saying, "Hey, it was stolen from me." So the guy goes, "Oh, okay, you're a Shem Aveda. Shem Aveda is like a Shem Chinam, so you're taki not responsible." But the Isag that Shem Mesacher says about Rav Yosef, if you think like you're saying the Shem Aveda is someone who's like a paid custodian, what does that mean that he's going to pay kefil because he tried to get himself off the hook with a claim of Geneva, which is just like stealing itself? But Karna Rabbi Shloimy, in the beginning when he said it was stolen, that's not exempting himself. That's incriminating himself. That's holding himself responsible because a Shem Mesacher is liable for Geneva. So what's this like? Oh, you got yourself off the hook. You claimed, and now what are you talking about? That says, okay, I got to pay you. So on that, Amalei, Rabbi Yosef says to him, no. What are we talking about over here? A more complex case. We're talking about where, not a regular ganav. We're talking about where armed thieves came middle of the night with their hoodies, and they forcibly took it from me. Where he was exempting himself. How's that possible? Because it's not a stam claim of Geneva Vaveda. Yes, they're Ganavim, but they're Ganavim of Einis, beyond my control. These guys came with guns and whatever, this and that. Says, I couldn't hold on to your watch. So therefore, since he was exempting himself with a claim of Geneva, so therefore, he'll be Chayav Kefil. Because, what do you mean? I thought you hold there, he's like a Shem Masach. He's not getting off the hook to say you got off the hook and now you're... Yeah, he was getting off there because it was a time of Einis. So Amalei says to him, but list him Mizui and Gazlan. What are you talking about? When he was making this claim of Einis to get himself off the hook, that was because he's saying, okay, what's the difference between the Ganav and Gazlan? Ganav secretly comes and sneaks in and steals, and Gazlan comes up to you with a gun and forcibly takes your money. Kefil is only by making a claim of Ganav, because that's what the Torah talks about in Shemais Chavez, Begunav mi b'seish. But a Gazlan, there's no such halacha, and so to Tayin is Gazlan has no such halacha. So how are you telling me that you're trying to create a case of Tayin is Ganav, but the Shem Esachar will be exempting himself that way, which is what you tell me Shem Aveda is, because even though he's quote unquote a Ganav, which is not so much of an Einis, it is an Einis because the guys came with guns. But that's not a Ganav, that's a Gazlan. Somebody he says, no, it's not true. Shaniam, I say list Mizuin armed bandits, keeping them at Tamer Me'inchi, since they hide from people, they don't come straight up to you in the middle of the street and say, hey, give me your money. They come in the middle of the night, but they're armed. But since they hide from people, Ganav, who he is considered as a thief, not as a robber, and therefore such a guy would pay kefil. And such a person who makes the claim that such a thing happened will also pay a kefil. Now, at the same time, regarding liability, the Shem Esachar would not be liable if it's true, because that would be an Einis. So it's like this lives in both worlds. It's still considered Toyin Tainis Ganav, but at the same time, it's not your regular classic Ganav. It is a claim of an Einis, which would have gotten the Shem Esachar off the hook. And therefore, that's why it's not a difficulty under Yosef. Could be Shem Aved is like Shem Asachar, but still he would be getting himself off the hook by making a stand Ganav, because not Stama Ganav is a Ganav of List Mizuin, which is a claim of an Einis. At the same time, it's still Ganav where he sneaks in, where it's still qualified for the halachic category of Kefil. Okay. The Gemara says, however, Esvei, the Gemara asks on this, the following Brisa, that this Brisa, Rashi says, I don't know where it was taught, but this is the mnemonic of Amrit. This is mnemonic number 5. Loy, says the Brisa, no. It's just in the middle of a conversation. Taisus tries to say what it's going on, but it's in the middle of a conversation. It says like this: if you're going to say that the halacha would be by an unpaid custodian, yeah, because she came Masham Tashum Kefu. We find there's a certain stringency by unpaid custodian, because we find that when he gets caught, he pays double the amount. Meaning, when he makes the claim, the Shem Echinim, when he makes a claim of 20 times Ganav, he's going to be liable for a punishment of kefil. You could have kefil by a Shem Echinim. What are you going to say by paid custodian? You can never have the liability of kefil. So in the way, Shem Esachar, although it's like a more stringent type of shmir, in the way it's lesser stringent in the sense of because the Shem Echinim could be liable for kefil. Shem Esachar can't be liable for kefil because when does kefil happen? As a shemer, which you didn't steal, if you make a claim it was stolen, and then you tried getting yourself off the hook, and it turns out you really stole it, meaning you really had it, so you'll be chayav like a ganav itself. But you can't have that by a Shem Esachar, because Shem Esachar actually is liable for that. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? This if you go with the answer that Rabbi Yisrael just gave, that list in Mizui and Ganavu, that armed bandits are themselves thieves. Comes out that by a paid custodian, you actually could pay kefil. How so? But 20 times listen Mizuyim by making the claim of armed bandits. Armed bandits is a claim of einis, but it still falls in the category of kefil, of ganav, and so you see Shemesach could have it. So what's that Bryce is saying? Oh, you only find the Shemi kefil by Shemechin, not Shemesach. He says no. This is what the Bryce was saying. No. If you're going to say b'shem mechinam, that this stringency applies by unpaid custodian. That he pays kefil by all his claims. In other words, anytime he claims that there was a thief, whether it was armed or not, because the Shem Mechinim is exempt from Gnev Aveda, so everyone comes that he was lying, he'll pay kefil. And B'Shem Esacha says the price. What do you say B'Shem Esacha? She'ein B'Shem Tishul kefil. He doesn't pay kefil when he makes a claim of a thief that was not armed, even if you find that it is by this guy, by the Shemer, because in the beginning he wasn't exempting himself from the principle. El B'Toyin Tain this list of Mizulin. It's only when he makes a claim of armed bandits. But generally, that's not the norm of when you say it was stolen. Stolen is by regular ganim, and therefore that's not something that Shem Esacha has, and that's what the price meant. But of course, you could find a case that Shem Esacha will also have the halacha of kefil. It's just not the norm. So therefore, that's not difficult on Rav Yosef. But the Gemara continues asking now, mnemonic number 6 of Nishbar, Esvei. The Gemara asks from the following brisa. The pasuk in Shemai says that if someone is going to borrow from his friend an object, an item, an animal, and then nishbar oimes, and it's going to break or it's going to die, so then shalom yishalim, the borrower, the shayil, has to compensate, has to pay back to the owner. Okay, says the brisa, ein li, I wouldn't know that the shayil, the borrower, is going to be liable el shvur mesa, only if the item breaks or if it dies, which is what the Torah gives as examples, which are cases of einis, which is beyond your control. When something breaks or something dies, those are the things that medicine has not figured out how to stop it. It happens. What would you say with thievery or with something getting lost? How would you know that a shayil is going to be chayav? So it doesn't mention this liability in Gnei Aveda. It only mentions by oinus. Ahmed kabel chayber. So the Rebbe said, of course, all the more so. If by paid custodian, which is a lower level of responsibility. Torah exempts him if the item breaks or if it dies. Like it says in the pasuk, Meiza Nishba Nishba, and it says after that he swears to that effect and he gets off the hook. And still he's liable if it gets stolen or gets lost, as it says Im Ganav Ganav. Okay, so then Shayil, so Bara, he's liable even for an oinus if it breaks or if it dies. In a din, isn't it all the more so? Of course, he's going to be chayiv if it gets stolen or lost. And says the Bais of Ezel Kavachema Shein Lav Tshuva. There's a Kavachema that there's no questions on that Kavachema. That's an ironclad Kavachema to say, of course, the shayil is going to be chayiv. If it's chayiv an oinus, the shayil is going to be chayiv an Gnev Aveda. But says the Gemara, wait a second. If you're saying again another question on that prior answer of Rav Yosef, if you say that armed bandits are considered like a ganev, am I in love tshuva? Why is there no response to this kavachema? You could refute it and say, wait a second, you can't bring a kavachema from of shayil from Shem Esacher. Why not? Isn't shayil more chamer and if Shem Esacher is chaim Gnev Aveda for sure? No. It's possible to have a case of a big punishment, a big clap. He has to pay double the amount between tiniest list of mezuyim when he makes the claim that it was armed bandits. Whereas by a borrower, there will never be a possibility of kefil, because even if they say armed bandits, he's chayiv in einzin, as it says v'nish b'meis. So even if he claims armed bandits took it, that would be incriminating himself with the principle. And someone that's not coming to steal the principle doesn't pay kefil. So how is the Brisa saying that in love tshuva there seems to be a refutation based on what Rabbi Yosef is saying that there is a possibility of kefil by Shem Esacha, which is not possible by Shayil? Amalei said to him, no, it's not difficult. Why? Sabar Haitana, the Tana of this Brisa of the Nishbar Oimes holds Karna Beloy Shvua, that the principle without an oath is adifa, is more severe mikafela b'shvua than the double payment with an oath. In other words, it's not true. You're trying to tell me that you'll find the chumrah that Shem Esacha has over Shah and the B'shai cannot learn out regarding Gnev Aveda? Not true. Shayil is more severe. Because when there is an einus of if the animal breaks or dies without any false oath, that's more severe than the Shem Esacha who is pater on einsim. Even though you're right, Shem Esacha could have a liability of kefil when he makes a claim of a list of mezuyin. That's not a stringency, because the kefil is not by a shomer until he swears falsely that it was stolen from him, and then witnesses come, as the Gemara says in Merubah later on of Samar Gimel Beis. So therefore, be'etzem, the knas is really because of the oath that the Torah is penalizing you for, but not because of any greater responsibility. So if you are having a case of, you're saying, oinus, When does the Shemesacha get this patch of kefil? When he says a claim of oinus, that claim of oinus, which you could get the kefil, is more severe by Shail, even though he doesn't have, because he's chayiv for when he makes a claim of oinus. So therefore, don't tell me that's a chumrah, kefil. This time to hold that the Karen without an oath, which is what you chayiv for oinus, is more severe than the kefil that you'll only get when you also make a tainis oinus of a list of mezuyin, when you make a shvua, which Rashi anyway says really the knas is really for the shvua, and therefore that's nothing of a stringency really that Shemesacha has over Shail. Nothing more says, a mnemonic number 7, Le Misayele. Let's say we'll support the opinion of Rav Yosef regarding this idea that list of mezuyin, armed bandits are ganav. We were asking from the previous brises on them. Let's say we'll support him from this last source. What does the brises say? Someone rents a cow from his friend, and it gets stolen. Okay, so you rented the car, Menachem's rent the cow, and it got stolen. So he comes back to Menachem, he says, look, the cow you rented me got stolen. Look, you know what? I'll pay. I'm not going to swear. Meaning, if the renter wanted to, he could swear in the court of law that it was stolen, and he'll be off the hook. Because depending, as we'll see in a moment, the status of a seicher is like a shemechinam. And therefore, if it gets stolen, you could get off the hook. He says, no, I will not take the liberty of swearing. I will pay. Okay? And then, subsequently, they find the thief who stole this guy's camel. So, Mesham Teshel Mikefel, we know that a guy has to pay kefil, but who does he pay to? Says a price, he pays it l'seicher. The renter gets the double payment now, because since he paid for it, comes out that what was stolen is his. So he gets the double payment. Fine. That's the brisa. Now, remember, we're trying to ask a question. We're trying to support Rabbi Yosef's halacha of list of mezuyin being ganev. So the Gemara explains that Savrua, the rabbis who wanted to support Rabbi Yosef from this brisa, they held that Rabbi Yehuda, that this brisa is going like Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar that he says, the Gemara brings in Bava Kama Daf Gimel and Aleph that this machlekes, and he holds that a seicher is like a guy who's getting paid because he's getting certain benefits by renting the item. So in a way, it's like a guy who's getting paid to watch something, and he's chayving a neva. Now, Tais explains that the reason why they assumed, which doesn't really make sense, we would have assumed that it's saying about Hashem Echinam, is because that's how we paskin. There's an anonymous Mishnah in Shavuos Daf Mem Testament Af that says, and therefore, since we have an anonymous Mishnah saying like that, the Gemara is assuming that would be the halacha. So if we had to explain the brisa, we would explain it based on the shittas from Yehuda that holds the seicher as like a nice sacher. Okay, that was their assumption. So that says the Gemara, even the fact that the brisa said, and he says, remember, this is a seicher, we're assuming like Rabbi Yehuda is like a shemer sacher, who's chayim aveda. But what did the guy say when he got stolen? He says, no, I'll pay and I won't swear. Wait, Machal, the inference is the Iba if he wanted to. Potli nafsh b'shvu, he could get off the hook by swearing. The question is, wait a second, how could he let himself off the hook? I thought a sheikh is like a shemer sacher who's chayiv on theft. Obviously, tain is list of mezuyim. Obviously, because he could claim that it was stolen forcibly from him, which is an einus. And what do we say there in the brisa? We subsequently find the thief. That you pay the double amount to the seicher, meaning that yes, he could have gotten himself off the hook, and therefore he when he pays, he's getting all the rights that there are over here, because it's not like he owed it to the master. He didn't owe it. He's paying out of his own goodwill, and therefore he's like buying it. So Shema min the list of Mizum Ganamu. So obviously, you see, like Rav Yosef, that armed bandit is like a thief, because or else, what are you saying that I could have sworn? You couldn't have sworn. You couldn't have done anything. I mean, they said, no. Misavik Rabbi Yehuda. Did you really think that this price is going like Rabbi Yehuda? The Amad that it says, that you have this whole shtickle tere, that, he's like a shemasacher, and really schayving in the So what's this that he could have gotten off the way to say, I could have sworn that it was stolen? What do you mean, then you would incriminate yourself? So what are you trying to say, that you could have gotten out of it and not pay it? Oh, so it must be listen. No. Maybe the price all the Reb Meir. That he says that the renter is like an unpaid custodian, and therefore, yes, it was stolen not by armed people, and then he could have exempted himself because he's like a shemechinim. There's no raya Rabbi Yosef of listim mezuyim he considered as a ganim. If you want another approach, you could say is that the truth is, no, it is Rabbi Yehuda, meaning that we want to say that it is possible to Rabbi Yehuda, but it's talking about thieves that are not armed. But kedemachlev Rabbi Baravua, like Rabbi Baravua switches around in Perkas Serchas Apoilim, and he says Vitani he learns it the other way around. That the machlekes is different the other way around. Seicher ketzim misham. How does a seicher pay? What's his responsibilities? The Meir he quotes him as kashem esach, as the paid custodian. The Yehuda he says kashem echin, like the unpaid custodian. So like Tais explains that the masli b'bayis ema is that really there's no ramification. It's just that according to you that you wanted to explain it like a Yehuda, which was like a shomer sacher, so he wants to respond to him and tell him that we could make it like Rabbi Yehuda, but it's just going to be like a Shem Achinim. So it's really the same answer we said before. It's just that like you want to say Rabbi Yehuda, which would have been the right to Rabbi Yosef if you held like Shem Asacha. It is like Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold like a Shem Asacha. He holds like really like Shem Achinim. Which Tosfos says that really over there's another Gemara B'Metzila Pei which also brings this, and there it makes more sense. He says maybe it just says it here because it says it over there. But really here, really not really teaching us anything. It's saying the same answer of Shemachin. It's just saying Rabbi Yehuda is the one who you wanted to say, and he's saying Shemachin, but it's the same approach. Another approach says the Gemara, Reb Zera Amar. He said that truthfully you could say like you wanted to say that the Shem Aveda, the Seicher is like a Shem Esacha, and even so, we will not support Rabbi Yosef that you see that there's kefil by listim mezuyin, which was this halacha where the guy made a claim of ganav and was saying, wait a second, but seicher is like a shem esacha. What could it be? His claim be that he's getting kefil? Must be listim mezuyin, who is a ganav but still would make you exempt, and therefore that's why it's a toin times gam that you bechayev a kefil. No, not true, because this they were saying kefil is by bandits that are not armed. But I thought we were saying that he's saying I'm not going to swear. But the inference is that he could have sworn and get himself off the hook. But wait a second, but Seicher like a Shem Esacher, and it's not armed bandits, because you don't want to bring a right to Rabbi Yosef, so then how could he have sworn to get himself off the hook? So but interesting the way the Gemara is answering. His claim was a claim that armed bandits has stolen from him. So therefore, yes, if he would have wanted to swear, he would have been off the hook, because that was his claim. But when they find the thief, for them to list him she'ein the mezuyim. Turns out the guy who actually did steal it was not an armed bandit. He was a regular thief who pays kefil. The regular thief, when we catch him, he said, I didn't come with any guns. Oh, so you're regular ganav. Regular ganav has to pay kefil. Now, the seicher already paid and was now got the right to it, so he'll get the kefil. So could be it's not true. Could be listim mezuyim and tainis listim mezuyim would not give you the rights per se, would not make a liability. You would not be chayav kefil for your claim of tainis listim mezuyim. Just like if you were listim mezuyim, you wouldn't, because maybe not confused. Maybe it's not a ganav. So how do we understand this case? So I'm saying interesting. He was saying it was listim mezuyim, so he was getting himself off the hook, even though a seich is like a shem esacha. But so where's their kefil over here? Because the attacker they weren't armed bandits. They were regular bandits. And therefore they will have to pay kefil. And he'll get it because he paid already. That's how Reb Zera answers it, that it's not a raya to Rav Yosef. Now he said in the Mishnah that regarding this animal that broke out, so let's say a related case is the Mishnah. Naflagina. If let's say an animal is walking, let's say on the owner's roof or somewhere in the street, whatever it is, and Naflagina falls into a garden, and then it gets pleasure from its fall into the guy's property. The owner has to pay what the pleasure was. So on that the Gemara explains, Amar Rav. Rav says this that we learned in the Mishnah that what it got pleasure is the owner has to pay is Torma benechveta. Torma when it got a klap, it got a bang on the grain, which it pushed it down into the ground and it ruined it. It ruined it when you have this big fat animal that just falls onto the produce. It ruins it. Now the animal got benefit, got pleasure because it didn't get injured from falling on the ground. That's his Rav. Is dinenis mashalemis that the Mishnah is telling us. Says the Gemara, wait a second. You tell me, but if the animal eats, that once it fell in there, it's eating now, munching, falling down, like, where am I? And he sees food and he starts munching away. What it God's pleasure, it doesn't have to pay? Oh, says the Gemara, shall we say this is Rav L'Shitas, according to his opinion? What's this? Because Amar Rav says, regarding a halacha that we brought in Perek Shosha Nagach, the Femzayim Abayz, when someone brings in his produce into his friend's courtyard without permission. So on that, the Mishnah teaches that if the homeowner's animal gets injured from that guy's uninvited produce, we said the owner of the produce is going to be chayav. Now, Rav qualified very importantly. He said that's only if the owner's animal slipped on the produce. So then, okay, the owner of the produce is going to be liable. But we said if the host's animal ate, and because of that it caused it bodily harm, the one that brought in the produce is going to be exempt. Why? Because Rav said the following words: the animal shouldn't have eaten. I'm not responsible, even though I brought in without permission. I'm not responsible for your animal getting injured. Ah, Seiroso. The owner of the animal says that when it fell down, it was an einus because it fell. Now, regarding its eating, it shouldn't have eaten. So what could I have done? We say an animal shouldn't have eaten. So seemingly this is Rav's opinion that he holds that we don't hold responsibility for an animal. It shouldn't have eaten. Some they say, how could you compare the two? You have to even understand what this Gemara is having me, no? When does Rav say over there on Daf Mem Zayin, shouldn't have eaten? That's when the victim gets injured. The with the perpetrator, so to speak, the guy, the intruder who brought in his unauthorized produce, could say, I'm not going to pay. Because your victim, your animal, shouldn't have eaten. But when the parah that falls in is eating someone else's produce, damaging someone else, the petita l'shlume, where he's trying to get himself off the hook. Did Rav say, well, it shouldn't have eaten? What did it mean? It shouldn't have eaten. What do you mean? My animal is like, yeah, you shouldn't have eaten. That's not my responsibility. I didn't. That's not. It's a very different. That's almost the opposite type of idea. Now the rather says the Gemara, no, as we continue of Chesed and Aleph. Bava Kama. What Rav is saying here is, I didn't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you if the animal eats when it fell down. The mishalemes that has to pay at least mashanenes. What pleasure of God? Because although you're right, the owner was negligent in watching it because it just fell. It was an einus. But ultimately, the animal gets pleasure. Of course, he would have to pay what it eats. Regarding the bang when it falls, that even the damage that which is an einus, Ema, I would say that the owner of the field is mavrich ari menichse chaverehu. What that's called is let's say like the mashal is a lion is coming to devour a person's property. And he chases away the lion from a person's property. He saves his friend's animal, in this case, that he doesn't get a bang on the ground. He's doing a mitzvah. He's saving the guy's animal by putting some type of blue cot out to save him from jumping out of the window. So he puts out his produce. And therefore, maybe he shouldn't take anything. And therefore, maybe maybe even what the pleasure is, even that he shouldn't have to pay because he's saving the property from a lion, from this animal getting injured. That's the chiddush. I was saying that no, even the bang. When Rav was saying nechvata wasn't coming to exclude the eating, that for sure. Saying even the nechvata he'll have to pay. Says why don't you say that? Why don't you say that then the owner doesn't have to pay because it's your mitzvah saving my stuff? Says no. When a guy actually chases away a lion from his friend's property, that he's doing willingly with his own awareness. I love midaita. Here it's not with his own awareness, and therefore that wasn't being done with consent, and therefore what the damage was done with this guy's property would have to be compensated. Or another approach is A general case when the guy chased away a lion from his friend's property, less they say there's no loss to the guy who's doing it. Hi, Islay Pseda. This guy has a loss. His produce is being ruined, and therefore you're going to be responsible to pay at least mashanenis, and therefore that's what the Chiddush of Rab was telling us, that even by nechvata, but not only nechvata, and therefore has nothing to do with Rab's other teaching of lachol. That's a fakir to svara of not being responsible for the victim, not saying that your own animal is not responsible for his own eating. To any time.